Thank you, Madam Deputy Clerk. It is now 5 o'clock. Welcome to our Committee of the Whole meeting, August 24th. I will call the meeting to order. I will start off with our land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabe, the people of the Three Fires known as the Gawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations who have inhabited this land from time immemorial. And further give thanks to Chippewa Saugeen and Chippewa Nawas, now known as Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis and Inuit whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse people. Approval of the agenda. Is there any add-ons to our agenda here tonight? Seeing none, the recommendation is that the agenda be approved as presented. Someone to move to put on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Sutherland, second by Councillor Barfoot. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, a show of hands, all in favor? The motion is carried. Declaration of pecuniary interest, you can clear anytime see fit during the meeting. We're now down to our public hearings. The recommendation is that the regular meeting of Committee of the Whole be recessed to hold public meeting hearings for 1 Z1322 for Zachary Taylor and Taylor Christie, 2 Z1422 for Sue Brown, 3 Z1222 for Bob Nickel, and 4 Z0822 for Mitchell Schultz. Someone to move to put on the floor, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Carlson, second by Councillor Pringle. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, a show of hands, all in favor? The motion is carried. This meeting has been called to consider zoning bylaw amendment application Z1322 for property located at 404197 Concession 20. Deputy Clerk, please give your report.
Notice of this public meeting was given by ordinary mail to all property owners within 120 meters, 400 feet of the subject property, by email to all the prescribed bodies on July 22nd, 2022, posted at the subject property and posted on the Township of Georgian Bluffs website. If a person or a public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Georgian Bluffs before the proposed zoning bylaw is adopted or passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Township of Georgian Bluffs to local planning appeal tribunal. The person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Clerk. Madam Planner, would you please give your review of the application, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, everyone. So this application that Council is considering is to rezone a portion of the property from agriculture to residential 1, and that's to facilitate the creation of a 1.24 acre privately serviced residential lot in Kemble. So Kemble is designated as a secondary settlement area in the County of Grey official plan, and while the majority of this lot is within the agricultural designation of the county plan, a portion of it does fall within the settlement area boundary where policies do permit the creation of residential lots. So the report on the agenda does provide a policy review, and the applicable policies, in addition to the comments received, support the application. Staff note that the Grey Sauble Conservation Authority comments indicate that the property has the potential to support bobolink, and do recommend that the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks be contacted should those species be encountered. The proposed severance is located northwest of the intersection of Kemble Rock Road and Concession 20. Drainage is an issue in Kemble, and through their review of the applications, the Conservation Authority recommends an engineered grading and drainage plan with the site-specific development. The building department will require this as part of a complete application at the time a building permit is submitted. There were no natural hazards identified on the property at the time of review, and the subject lands do contain areas regulated by the Grace Level Conservation Authority. The proposed lot meets the provisions of the bylaw for lot area and frontage, and the proposed residential use is in keeping with what currently exists in the neighborhood. The severance application associated with this zoning application was approved by the Committee of Adjustment on the 23rd of August. The following comments were received. The Grace Level Conservation Authority note no objections to the subject consent and zoning bylaw applications, as they are not anticipated to impact any natural hazards. They recommend contacting the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks should either bobolink or meadowlark be encountered prior to development occurring. They recommend a grading and drainage plan be submitted to the township with the site-specific development proposal at the building permit stage. The County Planning Department provided municipal staff are satisfied that the proposed lot and any future lots can be sustainably serviced by private servicing. County staff have no further concerns. The Risk Management Office have no comment. Hydro One, no comment. And we circulated the application to all property owners within 120 meters and received comments back from David Johnson. Mr. Johnson expressed concerns with drainage in Kemble. He has no issue with the creation of a lot in the northernmost area of the land subject to the rezoning, but he does not support additional lot creation within that southern area of the property being rezoned. As noted in the report, the recommendation in the report is to approve the application, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Thank you, Madam Planner. No members of the public register with the clerk to provide comments in support of or in opposition to the application. Agent Ron Davison registered to participate on behalf of Mr. Davison. Is Ron here? Okay. So if Mr. Davis not here, I'll continue on with the application. Does the committee have any questions on the application? Deputy Mayor Carlton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment on the comment that Mr. Johnson made there, saying that he would be okay with that lot being, the residential lot being elsewhere in the property, but it wouldn't be able to be there, would it? It can only be down in that bottom corner where, because that's within the settlement area, it couldn't be elsewhere in the property.
Madam Planner.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Deputy Mayor, that's correct. Only the lot creation is only permitted within the settlement area boundary. The agricultural lot creation policies in the county official plan do not support the creation of non-farm residential lots.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from council? Seeing none, I will move on with the recommendation. It has been demonstrated that the application Z1322 for Z Taylor and T Christie for lands described as concession 20 part lot 40 Campbell is consistent with the provincial policy statement 2020, the county gray official plan, recolor gray, the township of Georgian Bluffs official plan, and intent of the township of Georgian Bluffs zoning bylaw 2020. It is recommended that the application be approved. Mr. Davidson, I see you're online now. Any comments?
Yeah, sorry about that. I could not get on. I wasn't let in there. No, I think I'm hearing everything positive. We dealt with the consent application at the Committee of Adjustments, and in the sake of interest, or in the interest of time, I'll stop talking. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Do I have somebody to put it on the floor, please? Moved by Councillor Coburn, second by Councillor Sutherland. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? See none, show of hands, all in favor? The motion is carried. Can I ask for the adjournment, please? A motion to adjourn, moved by Councillor Barfoot, second by Councillor Coburn, that we adjourn. Show of hands, all in favor? We are adjourned. Excuse me. This meeting has been called to consider zoning bylaw amendment application Z1422 for property located at 130 Crookshank Street, 300059 Gray Road, 170 Shell Lake. Madam Deputy Treasurer, please give your report.
Notice of this public meeting was given by ordinary mail to all property owners within 120 meters, 400 feet of the subject property by email to all the prescribed bodies on July 19th, 2022, posted at the subject property and posted on the Township of Georgian Bluffs website. If a person or a public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Georgian Bluffs before the proposed zoning bylaw is adopted or passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal a decision of the Township of Georgian Bluffs to a local planning appeal tribunal. The person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal unless it is in the opinion of the tribunal there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Clerk. Madam Planner, please go ahead with your report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This application seeks to rezone a portion of the property that is currently zoned plan development to residential 1 and environmental protection. It also seeks a 0-meter setback to the environmental protection zone, is supported by the EIS that was conducted to determine if development was possible on the property, and it will also recognize a development envelope on the property. This zoning application will facilitate the recreation of 2 lots that merged when registered in the same name. The 23-acre severed lot is part of a wetland and will be donated to the Sydenham Conservation Foundation. The retained 10.5-acre lot will be rezoned to permit a dwelling to be built within a defined building envelope, which has been delineated by the environmental impact assessment. A portion of the lot will also be rezoned to environmental protection. The environmental impact study contains a remediation plan for the portion of the retained lot where the wetland was filled in. All development and maintenance requirements from that environmental impact study will be captured in a site plan agreement and registered on title to the lands. The staff report contains a review of the applicable policies which, provided the mitigation measures are adhered to, do support the application. Provincial policy permits partial services in settlement areas to allow for infill and minor rounding out of existing development, provided site conditions are suitable for the long-term provision of partial services with no negative impact. The water main runs along Division Street, and the Operations Department has confirmed that a connection is available. The applicant will be required to connect and pay all costs associated with the connection to the water main. As there are no municipal sewers in the Shallow Lake area, the site will be serviced with a septic system. The design of the septic system will be determined at the building permit stage and must comply with Ontario Building Code requirements. The Committee of Adjustment approved the severance application on the 23rd of August. The following comments were received. Grace Harbor Conservation Authority has no objections to the approval of the subject zoning bylaw amendment and consent applications. Furthermore, they understand a site plan agreement will be implemented to address the natural heritage measures identified in the EIS. The County Planning Department defers to the Conservation Authority for positive comments on the EIS and directs that the mitigation measures be implemented. They have no concerns with the subject application and wish to be notified of any decision on the files. The Risk Management Office has no comments, and we circulated the application to all the property owners within 120 meters, and we received written comments from Tara Grady, who noted concerns with noise, traffic, the destruction of natural view, and a disruption of the peaceful enjoyment of their property, in addition to concerns related to the environment and the habitat that the property provides for animals. So just in response to Ms. Grady's comments, I did provide her with a copy of the EIS as well as the Conservation Authority comments, and I had a bit of a discussion with her about the development on the site and the mitigation measures that will be incorporated into the site plan agreement. And I didn't receive any follow-up comments from her. And then at the public hearing last night at the Committee of Adjustment, written comments were submitted by Terry and George Good. They expressed concerns related to the EIS, the impact of development on the wetland, and the location of the house. There was some information provided to them at the Committee of Adjustment meeting. And additionally, I did follow up with Terry this afternoon and answered questions about the development and the impact of the EIS and any of the remediation and rehabilitation requirements that will be contained in the site plan agreement. So she did note that I had answered her questions and she had no further comments. So just in conclusion, the proposal meets the applicable policies, and the report recommends that the application be approved. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council has.
Thank you, Madam Planner. No members of the public registered with the clerk to provide comments and support offered or in opposition to the application. The applicant is not here tonight. Does the committee have any council have any questions? If Mayor Carlton.
Just one sort of, and it's not really important, but I'm curious. The civic address is showing as being on Crookshank Street and Gray Road 170, but we were told last night the entrance would be off of Division. So will that change that civic address, or will it stay as what's listed here?
Madam Planner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the Deputy Mayor. At the time the building permit is applied for, they will be required to also apply for a new entrance permit to come off of Division Street, simply because they are assigned a 911 number off of Crookshank. And then the back half of the property, it actually fronts onto, I think it was Gray Road 170. So they will be required to apply for a new entrance permit.
Okay. Any other questions from council? Welcome, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, if there are no other questions, I'm going to read the recommendation. It has been demonstrated that application Z1422 for Sue Brown for lands described as Plan 857 Lot 50 and Lot 51 Shell Lake is consistent with the Provincial Policy Statement 2020, the County of Gray Official Plan, Recolor Gray, and Towns of Georgian Bluffs Official Plan and intent of the Towns of Georgian Bluffs Zoning Bylaw 2020. It is recommended that the application be approved. Someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Colburn. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? See none, a show of hands, all in favor? The motion is carried. I would like a motion to adjourn. Public meeting, moved by Councillor Pringle, second by Deputy Mayor Carlton. Show of hands for adjournment. It's carried. Moving on for our next public meeting. This meeting has been called to consider zoning bylaw amendment application Z1222 for property located at 318699 Gray Road 1. Madam Deputy Clerk, please advise the method by which notice of this public meeting was given.
Notice of this public meeting was given by ordinary mail to all property owners within 120 meters, 400 feet of the subject property by email to all the prescribed bodies on July 15, 2022, posted at the subject property and posted on the Township of Georgian Bluffs website. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Georgian Bluffs before the proposed zoning bylaw is adopted or passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Township of Georgian Bluffs to the local planning appeal tribunal. The person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before a local planning appeal tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Clerk. Madam Planner, please proceed with your review.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this property is located at the corner of Indian Acres Road and Gray Road 1. The application is to add permissions to the property to permit a business, which is Modern Pure Air Grey Bruce, to operate out of the detached accessory structure that currently exists and is actually zoned to permit a heated storage business. The application proposes to park work vehicles inside the storage building outside of work hours and permit employee parking on site during the day. The nature of the operation is an HVAC cleaning business, so all of the work that is performed off-site. No other relief to the bylaw has been requested. An application to amend the existing site plan agreement has also been submitted. The site plan agreement clearly identifies that the only use permitted on that property for that structure is the heated storage business. So it needs to be amended if council approves the application. The Grey County Official Plan designates the subject property as rural, and within that designation, it does permit buildings, yards associated with trades, including contractors' yards, plumbing, electrical, and heating, cooling shops. So what they're applying for is supported by the County Official Plan. The property is located within a significant woodland, and as we know, the policies don't support development or site alteration without an environmental impact study. As the proposed use is within an existing structure, an EIS was not required for this application. Right now, the property is zoned RU56. That is a rural with exceptions to permit a storage business. Within that zoning, no outside storage and display related to that storage business is permitted on the property. Because the property contains a dwelling, residential uses are permitted, and uses accessory to that residential use are permitted as well, provided that they comply with the provisions of the zoning bylaw. The property is approximately 1.4 acres in size, and it doesn't meet zone provisions to qualify for a home industry use as of right, which was why the initial amendment application came forward to permit the storage business. Council previously approved a rezoning to permit a home industry use, specifically that storage business. So the nature of the proposed business, being the HVAC cleaning business, is that the work is performed off-site. The applicant is proposing to park 2 service vehicles inside the storage building when they are not en route to service calls. There is room on the property for 4 employee vehicles to be parked. There's a portion of Indian Acres Road that the accessory structure accesses, and back in 2017, council did approve a limited service agreement that gives the applicant permission to enter the property off that portion of Indian Acres Road. The limited service agreement speaks to that the township will not provide or services or maintain that portion of the road. Council also authorized a bylaw to authorize the site plan agreement to address the operation of the home industry. So that site plan agreement addresses access, lighting issues, and hours of operation, just to ensure that the business is it meets the intent of home industry provisions and doesn't become a conflicting land use in the neighborhood. So if the application is supported, then the existing site plan agreement needs to be amended so that it can reflect the additional use and delineate the employee parking. The comments that we've received so far were from the Conservation Authority. They have no objection to the proposal for the described zoning bylaw amendment, as it does not impact any regulated areas or natural heritage features or hazards. The submitted site plan does show a newly constructed storage shed, which lies within the regulated area on the Eastern Valley slope. This storage shed will require a permit, and they wish to be notified of any decision with respect to this file. The Grey Sauble drinking water source protection, they did provide a notice of restricted land use, and they note that no policies apply to the activities identified in the application under the source plan, but it is important to note that the above property is located within Intake Protection Zone 2 for the East Linton drinking water system, whereby the storage of fuel greater than 10,000 liters is regulated. If fuel storage is planned, the property owner needs to contact the Risk Management Office. The County Planning Department note that Transportation Services reviewed the application and they have no concerns. Provided positive comments are received from the local conservation authority regarding the significant woodlands. County planning staff have no concerns with the subject application. They wish to be notified of any decision rendered with respect to the file. We circulated the application to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property. And we received comments back from David and Lorna McMillan. And they noted no concerns with the use of the building by Pure Air, noting their start and end times occurring. Sorry, they noted start and end times of the work occurring on site and identified the location of employee parking. The full comments are attached for council's review. We also received comments from Spencer Planning Services on behalf of clients Amanda and Chris Phillip. They raised concerns with regard to the size of the accessory structure, the operation of the home industry by owners who do not live on site, various issues related to noise and traffic, parking and appropriate buffering between land uses, and sufficient parking has not been provided to house employees and work vehicles on the subject lands, and the increasing commercial use of the property. The agent requests notice of any decision on the file, and the full comments are attached for council's consideration. So as noted in the planning report, the County of Grey, with regards to traffic, the County of Grey Transportation Services reviewed the application. They had no concerns with the traffic. And so with our zoning bylaw, home industry uses, we don't require that a home industry use have the property owner live on site. What we try to do is stay away from associating a land use with a specific person. So we don't zone for people. So if a land use is going to be allowed, it's associated with the property. Sorry. Additionally, I did conduct a site visit just to see the parking spaces, to see if there's sufficient room on site for staff parking, and to have a look inside the building to make sure that there would be sufficient space inside to keep the service trucks. So the deputy clerk is just going to put up some photos that I took when I conducted the site visit, just to show members of council. So this picture here is intended to show the inside of the structure and what's currently there. You'll notice that there are collector cars within the structure. And if you look, there is one of the Pure Air vehicles parked there. And you can see there's room for an additional truck. So the next picture is intended to show how narrow the entrance and exit is. So you couldn't technically park 3 trucks across the span of that building, simply because you probably wouldn't be able to maneuver them out. This speaks to the limited size of the operation. That building, with the current capacity, doesn't have the ability to accommodate a large operation. That is one of the considerations that I had when recommending approval of the application, is because this business could be scoped through a bylaw to allow it to continue to operate as a storage business and accommodate the parking of 2 vehicles related to the Pure Air business. And next one. So this picture here is taken standing in front of the neighbor across the street, their driveway, looking into the Nickel property, just to get a view of what they're looking at from their property. as you can see from that angle, they're really seeing the pump house and a bit of the shed that's been recently constructed, and then a portion of the employee parking. So where those two white vehicles are, there's enough room there for 3 spots. And then where the black truck is, further over in front of that the newly constructed accessory structure, is enough room for another 1 vehicle for staff parking. So with those trucks, my understanding is that quite often it's usually 1 employee going out in the trucks, but for some of the larger jobs, they would then have 2. So 2 drivers and maybe 1 or 2 passengers. So there wouldn't be more than 4 employees working out of this location. The site plan can be amended to scope down the use, as well as a site-specific bylaw can restrict the use and so that it's only the 2 vehicles. And there's also the opportunity to restrict the size of use in the building. So I believe it's 223 square meters. The zoning bylaw can then restrict the use of the building to half that, which is what the trucks appear to be occupying when they're parked inside. So the recommendation in the report is to approve the application, and then considering that additional use or permissions on the property can get out of hand if the zoning isn't scoped down to recognize it as a home industry use. So we have to remember that the property could be sold. Someone else could purchase it. And if the structure is in place and the zoning is not specific enough, then a more intense use could take place in that building. That's why I'm recommending that we scope the zoning down to limit it to the 2 service truck with 4 outside employee parking spaces, and only permit a business operation where the work is performed off-site. And so that language can be written into a zoning bylaw and also into the site plan agreement, which would then be re-registered on title to the lands, so that anyone purchasing the property understands that there are operation restrictions related to a small-scale home industry use. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you, Madam Planner. 3 members of the public, Chris and Amanda Phillips and L. Spencer, registered with the clerk to provide comments in support of or in opposition to the application. Chris and Amanda, please go ahead first. Chris and Amanda, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I just want to reiterate that they have been operating the equipment. This business is doing beyond what they're asking right now. You know, we have air compressors running at 7 o'clock in the morning, 6:30 in the morning. There is no set hours. Even right now, they have an employee that they're parked there, right? So we have this traffic coming in and out. These are things that we really need to look at. In my opinion, he hasn't been forthcoming all along. I have to wonder, what is the next step? That's about all I've got to add at this point.
Thank you, Chris. Ms. Spencer, any comments? Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, Mr. Mayor and members of council, to speak on behalf of the residents next door, Mr. and Mrs. Philp. I will reiterate the concerns. I shared all of the concerns with council as a whole by email, so I can appreciate I don't need to repeat myself. But again, going back to the increasing types of intensity of land use in an accessory building that wasn't intended to be there to begin with, as a home industry use, Very loosely, I would say, in my professional opinion, it is not a home industry use when the house is being rented to another individual who does not reside on the property. Second to that, there is an issue that this is an unopened and unmaintained road. The ability for them to use the limited service agreement to obtain the access component to the building is significant, as that road will deteriorate over time, and it will be the municipality's responsibility to upgrade that road at some point in time. If the use intensifies, it's just going to lower the life of that road. One. Second to that, the noise component. Air compressors, as I'm sure we can all appreciate, are very loud, and being used at all times of operation isn't appropriate. And if there are limited hours to the business through a site plan agreement, that's one step towards something that could be enforced. But as we can appreciate, I'm sure council is well aware, working on a complaint-based bylaw enforcement component doesn't make it very easy for those items to be caught at the time they're actually occurring, unless there's video footage, which can be argued, and we all know that. So in essence, it seems to be that it went from a height restriction or height increase through a minor variance, then moved into a business that's having heated dry storage for collector vehicles. And now it's moving into a commercial operation, essentially, which actually could be defined as an industrial use as a home industry, which isn't permitted. So the questions are valid, and I think it's really important for council to consider. I appreciate my friend, Planner Burnett, for her point that the property could be sold at any point in time. And that means that if you're not careful with any zoning approval, you're only accelerating what could happen going forward. And it's unfortunate that the zoning amendment came after the business started practicing. It's also unfortunate that the site plan agreement was not amended or have a draft agreement for some council, comfort at this point in time that there is going to be those restrictions. I can appreciate that will come at a later date, as it does in due process. But those are the comments and concerns that obviously Chris and Amanda Philp have, and I'm happy to provide any further clarity if you need me to do so, but I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Spencer. The applicant, Bob Nickel, registered with the clerk to participate in tonight's meeting. Mr. Nickel, do you wish to comment? Yep. Go to Mike, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, first of all, I think just a little bit of background here with respect to my son-in-law and daughter's business. They started that business in December 19, and they acquired their first van, and it has been parked on the property outside. It was, I should say, up until this past winter. At that point, when they asked if they could park the vehicle inside, because it's a diesel engine, the cold weather and so on, I agreed to provide the space available to put it inside versus leave it outside at that time. And so last winter it was kept inside other than, of course, when it leaves to go do the job. What changed this spring, around March, I believe, through the growth of the business, they acquired a second van. And at that time, I said to them, well, okay, now that you've got two, let's park both of them inside all year round, not just in the winter, in the summer, the spring, the fall, so that they're inside, they're out of sight. It was pointed out to us that my son-in-law, the air compressors that are located within these vans that are used to blow the duct systems and the HV systems out, he wanted them started up before they head off to Collingwood or Port Elgin to make sure everything was functional. And they would do that just before they left the property. We subsequently discussed that as well and decided that we would do that inside the building. The building is insulated. It's virtually soundproof. And that way the noise issue would be reduced, if not totally eliminated. We are going to, and will, with the colder weather, install a venting system, obviously, for fumes, like they have in an auto garage. And so all of that was decided and has been implemented and has been the case now for probably a couple of months. Now, this was all done from our perspective to respect and appreciate that the neighbors would prefer to see the vans out of sight when they do come back at the end of the day and when they go out in the morning, they're gone, of course. The picture you saw, that particular point that picture was taken, only one van had gone out, and you can see the other van was parked in there. And that's been the way it's been now for some time. So it's been my desire to be respectful and appreciative of the environment that we work in and of the neighbor's situation. In fact, I reached out to Mr. Phillips, specifically on more than one occasion with the intent to, let's talk about this, and if there's concerns, let's see if we can work it out. Unfortunately, he chose not to return my calls. He chose not to respond, which is too bad, because my attitude is, as neighbors, if we can sit down and address each other's concerns and find a solution that's win-win, then that's a better approach than have to go through a process like this. However, having said that, it is what it is, and I think it's very important that moving forward with that relationship that I put it on the record that I am more than receptive to sit down with any one of my neighbors and talk to them. If there's a concern, I want to know about it. If one of the employees were to start up one of those compressors, too early in the morning, or do it in a way that was noisy, I know I want to know about that. I know my son-in-law wants to know about that. That's the way we want to do this. And so from that standpoint, I would encourage all of us to communicate and work together to find a solution. And I hope you'll support my application, because I do really believe that we can work together, and noise, traffic, all these issues won't be a concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. Does the committee have any questions? Councilor Colburn, please go ahead.
Not even sure where to start with this. I feel like this is exactly what we were trying to prevent in the first place. I do agree with the description of the transition of how this has gone from, hey, let's have a storage facility for my own belongings, to let's store somebody else's, and let's make this more of an industrial or commercial kind of a site. And if I recall correctly, this is exactly what we were concerned about happening in the first place. And here it is happening. So I think the concerns are valid. And I would absolutely not support this application without, as our planner says, scoping it down and scoping it down again. I think that we need to respect the neighbors and the enjoyment of their property. And I just feel like this keeps coming back and keeps coming back, and the restrictions keep getting looser and looser. So I guess I do have a question for our planner, if I may, through you, Mr. Mayor.
Please go ahead.
We've talked about permitted use for a residential dwelling, and Jen, I think you said that those permitted uses should not go with the person, but the property, or do I have that backwards?
Madam Planner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councilor Colburn. So the uses go with the property. They're determined by the zone. The property zoning does allow for residential dwelling, and uses accessory to a residential use. So that would include a detached garage, a pool, a deck, anything associated with residents. So, for example, trailer parking, the residents that are in that dwelling are permitted to, sorry, I'm getting some feedback, are permitted to store up to 3 RVs or trailers or boats, provided they're licensed on the property, because it's associated, that storage is associated with the residential use. However, the structure, anything to do with that business, there's no outside storage or display permitted under the current site-specific zoning bylaw. So if the tenants have an RV or a trailer or a boat, then they are permitted to park that on site.
But with respect, we're not talking about the tenants here. And we're not even talking about the property owner's vehicles. We're talking about his son-in-law and daughter's vehicles. And I fail to see how that meets what we would call a home industry. It's not their property, and it's not the tenant's business. So I'm trying. I'm sorry, but I'm struggling to wrap my head around this. It seems like we're taking the most loose definition we possibly can of a home-based industry.
So the provisions in the zoning bylaw don't require that a home industry is operated by an owner or somebody living on site. It doesn't talk about the operator. It just speaks to the provisions of the home industry. So it for example, it wouldn't permit vehicle sales and service. So it's the home industry use has to be something that's smaller scale.
Councilor Colburn, did you get your question answered? And Councilor Thompson, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I threw my hand up at the start there, but I intended to, but it didn't. I am going to declare a conflict of interest before you vote on the matter. I just wanted to verbalize that.
Okay, the clerk has so noted. Thank you. Does council have any questions? Deputy Mayor Carlton.
I'm just curious, there was mention in here of a building permit for a building that's already been put up. Are we dealing with two separate things tonight? Here, is there actually a building permit involved in this as well?
Madam Planner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to the Deputy Mayor. This zoning application doesn't consider the building permit. That is administered by the building department under the building code, as well as the Grey Sauble Conservation Authority under their permitting process. The extra or the unpermitted structure is brought up because the Conservation Authority did include comments about its existence, noting that a permit's required from their office because it's in a regulated area. The building department is aware that the structure exists, but they are not issuing a building permit until council makes a decision on the application, and the site plan agreement has been amended, because once that agreement is amended, it needs to include the location of that structure. So they're not going to issue a permit for something that doesn't have a permit from the Conservation Authority and isn't approved within the site plan agreement.
Thank you, Madam Planner. Councilor Pringle, please go ahead.
Thank you, Smart. Yeah, just to try and take a bit of a different perspective, at least my own perspective on it, I guess. I was out to the property and walked it with Mr. Nichols there, and I was there when both the vans were there. It was peaceful. There was not a soul around, and the vehicles were out of sight, out of mind. And the way I know we've got provisions in there and bylaws in there that state that we can do certain things, and obviously things change over time, and I get we got to keep things fairly structured and tight on it. And what I really honestly see here is a gentleman that's really trying to help out his daughter and son-in-law get started in a small business. If it grows anymore, they're gonna have to move anyway. They won't have room to be there. I know that's maybe on the heartstring side of things, of maybe what I see, but at the end of the day, if we had to put a couple of stipulations in there that maybe you can't start the compressors up till 8 in the morning. I don't know if that's viable, or they have to go down the road to the country to start the compressors. If those couple of revisions in there will satisfy the neighbors, then that's something that we may have to look at. But I really believe this whole scenario is about a gentleman trying to help out his family that started a business during COVID. If it grows, they got to move anyway. There won't be enough room for them. They'll have to go elsewhere. So then we're going to be back to where he was before. So I'm just kind of coming at it at a different angle, I think. And like I said, the afternoon that I was there, we could hear the squirrels. There wasn't people around the place. But so that's just my 2 cents on it.
Thank you, Councilor Pringle. Councilor Thompson, I noticed your hand is still up. Do you have a question or? No. Okay.
Apologies.
Councilor Colburn, please go ahead.
We, before I'm asked to vote on this particular issue, I would like to ask our planner once again to specifically state what the scope down use restrictions would be. I know that you mentioned restricting it to only 2 vehicles and restricting the use, the size of the use of the building to 1/2. Were there, can we also add something about the hours of operation? I have to agree with the individual who presented earlier, and I'm sorry, I have forgotten her name. Laura Lee. I have to agree that the best way of dealing with nuisance bylaws like noise, I mean, we've seen the struggles we've had trying to enforce those kinds of bylaws, and it's darn near impossible. But you know, I guess if we can add that to it as well, perhaps that will give our bylaw department something specific to go on in the event that there are complaints about noise at unreasonable times in the morning.
Madam Planner, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Coburn. We don't typically include hours of operation in the zoning bylaw. What we would do is include it in the site plan agreement. The existing site plan agreement does contain hours of operation for the storage business. So what we would do is we would amend the agreement to include hours of operation. The other thing is that we would also consider the noise bylaw. The township does have a noise bylaw, and we would parallel the requirements of the noise bylaw within that site plan agreement.
Thank you. Councillor Coburn, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I just want to know what I'm voting on when the time comes to vote, and that these measures are incorporated into the decision that we make.
Thank you. Councillor Sutherland, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I tend to agree with Councillor Pringle. You know, you've got a young family trying to make an honest living. I don't see a problem with that. I've driven by the property for years. I watched that building get built. It's very well maintained. It's clean, organized, very well kept around there. You know, I don't see, to be honest with you, I don't know that I've ever seen any more than one van there. I do see the odd vehicle parked there while they're working, but I don't see an issue with that. There's never a traffic concern, I don't think. They're coming onto a major road. You know, when you can look at that, it is a bad hill and curve that the vehicles coming from town, they're trying to get home at night or whatever, but I don't see there being too much of a concern to have, you know, the 2 vehicles permitted. You know, it's well-maintained property. You know, I think there's a lot bigger issues out there than this one. You know, if we just want to go with well-maintained properties, I'm sure we can drive down Grey Road 1 and find a half a dozen places that need cleaned up. So I think, you know, having those provisions of, you know, maintain, you know, I guess we can't only do, we can't do hours of operation on the zoning, but on the site agreement. And, you know, if we could try to keep the noise to a minimum and try to make everybody happy and work together, I don't see a problem with this.
Thank you, Councillor Sutherland. Any other comments from council? Seeing none, I'm going to read the recommendation. It has been demonstrated that application Z1222 for Bob Nickel for land subscribed as Concession 3 and PT Lot 17 Sarawak is consistent with the Provincial Policy Statement 2020, the County Gray Official Plan, recolor gray, and intent of the Township of George Bluff Zoning Bylaw 2020. It is recommended that the application be approved. Someone's moved to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Pringle, second by Councillor Sutherland. Is there any other discussion on the motion before us? Sorry, Councillor Coburn, go ahead.
So I'm sorry, this is the 3rd time I've asked this. Should the motion not include some wording regarding the scope down use, or is that already included in this motion?
Madam Planner?
My recommendation was to approve it. It doesn't include direction to scope down.
Sorry, did you say does not?
It does not specifically, no. The recommendation is to approve the application.
So why, so when, isn't this where we would talk about whether we're approving the scope down version of it or not? This has nothing to do with that?
Madam Planner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Coburn. So before the application, the application would be approved, and then the site-specific zoning amendment bylaw would come to council for approval. So you would have an opportunity before you approve the bylaw to look at the wording and determine that it was sufficient and that it met the intent of the application.
Okay, so there is time to do it when the zoning bylaw comes back.
That's correct.
Yeah. Sorry, did I ask for a mover and seconder? I did? Okay, sorry. Is there any other comments before I call for the vote? Show of hands, all in favor of the motion before us? The motion has been carried. And so noted that Councillor Thompson has declared a conflict of interest. Okay. Carol, Councillor Barfoot?
I just have a question, Mr. Mayor. So this, just so that everybody understands, if we can make it any muddier, please do it. This has been the most confusing discussion that I've ever been involved in. But what I want to make clear to Mr. Nickel and whoever is objecting to it, that this is not a done deal. Now, there still has to be more motions passed. So just so that everybody understands, because I'm having a hard time understanding all this back and forth and back and forth. So please explain that, Madam Planner.
So Madam Planner, the next approach is that the zoning is back for council to approve. We're a committee of the whole. We don't really approve. It's council as a whole. Am I correct saying that?
The committee would make a decision on the application and council ratifies that decision and then authorizes the bylaw.
Okay, so we have done that so far tonight.
You have not authorized a bylaw.
No. Okay. All right.
You are making a decision on whether or not to support the application as presented.
Okay, and we have made that decision by motion of council.
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right. That's all I was trying to get out. Okay. So we'll move on for our next public meeting. Go ahead, Mr. Nickel.
Since I spoke, I just want to make something very clear. I built this building to put my cars in. I've started collecting classic cars. I've increased the number. I've made it abundantly clear to my son-in-law and my daughter that they'll never take over this building totally, that it will always be, and that the space that's being allocated now is it. If their business grows beyond that, they will be moving out. It won't be an issue of you need to enforce it. I will enforce it. That's my situation. And as I have confirmed with Ms. Burnett, that I have no problem with what's been discussed about specifically limiting this. I understand and appreciate why, as she's pointed out, that if I sold the property or they sold their business, there is no lease. They're there because they're my family. That's the only reason why they're there. If they sold this business, the new owner can go find another place. They're not staying in my building. That's just me saying it. But if there's any language that can be put in that you've discussed and the concerns you've expressed tonight, they equally address my concerns. So I don't have to argue with them about it. You'll tell them what they can't do. So I have no problem with that. That's not what this is about. This is just about things that have evolved. And as I said, they started parking their vehicle and using this property to the extent they are right now. almost 3 years ago. This is not new. What changed was they got a second van, and I said, okay, let's get them inside. Let's get them out of sight.
Sorry,
Let's clean-
Bob. Sorry, Bob. Thanks very much for your comments, but we've dealt with the issue. We
I
have to move
understand.
forward.
But I just wanted you to understand that I'm not objecting to what you're
No,
discussing
I understand.
with respect
I
to
have to move
defining
forward,
this
Bob.
arrangement. Thank
Thank
you.
you. We're down to our next meeting, our last one. This meeting has been called to consider zoning bylaw amendment application Z0822 for property located at 177687 Gray Road 18. Madam Deputy Clerk, please advise the method by which this public meeting was given.
Notice of this meeting was given by ordinary mail to all property owners within 120 meters, 400 feet of the subject property, by email to all the prescribed bodies on July 14th, 2022, posted at the subject property and posted on the Township of Georgian Bluffs website. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Georgian Bluffs before the proposed zoning bylaw is adopted or passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Township of Georgian Bluffs to a local planning appeal tribunal. The person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Clerk. Planner, please give your review of the application, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this application is made by Mitch Schultz, and there was a previous application to increase total lot coverage and accessory structure lot coverage that was considered by council on the 15th of June of this year. As a result of the comments received through that application, additional information was received and was submitted to satisfy both agency and neighbor concerns. So this application was amended to also include relief to increase the height for an accessory structure from 5 to 6.5 meters. And that will permit a 446 square meter accessory structure for personal storage on a rural residential lot. So the application is for total lot coverage, accessory structure lot coverage, and the height of an accessory structure. The property is designated rural and does permit residential uses, and it contains a portion of hazard lands in the northeastern corner of the property. However, there is no development or site alteration proposed within that designation. The Conservation Authority identified significant woodland, significant wildlife habitat, fish habitat, and potential for endangered or threat species. They note no anticipated negative effects with the implementation of timing windows for tree removal to avoid the active woodland bird nesting and rearing season from May 1st to August 15th, in accordance with Federal Migratory Birds Act, as well as appropriate sediment and erosion control measures. They're not anticipating negative impacts with this proposed development. Their comments do identify that development will result in an increase in minor site imperviousness. They reviewed the log grading and drainage plan that was submitted with the second application, and noted that drainage appears to be generally maintained and directed accordingly. The grading and drainage plan was also reviewed and accepted by the chief building official. Natural hazards on the property are associated with the flood and erosion potential of a watercourse and wetland feature located on the lot. The proposed development is located outside of the hazard area, and the Conservation Authority concluded consistency with provincial policy, section 3.1. The Conservation Authority did complete a site visit on June 28th to assess the nature of the unmapped watercourse throughout the central portion of the property. They provided an update. They updated the EP zone boundaries effectively, and with a 15-meter flood and erosion hazard limit as per their Ontario regulation 15106, and they're recommending that the 15-meter zone setback be reduced to 0 in this location. So they did provide us with updated mapping, and that was provided to the county, who then provides us with an updated map schedule reflecting the realigned EP zone. The property falls within the rural zone, which permits a total lot coverage of 10%, with a maximum accessory structure lot coverage of 5%. And that's for rural residential lots that have less than 2 acres. So we know that the proposed 6.5 meter height exceeds what the bylaw allows, and that's 5 meters. And we typically see applications to increase the height of a structure where there is a need to accommodate recreation vehicles, which require a greater height clearance. So the applicant did state that the structure is for personal storage items, including a camper trailer, snowmobile, and other trailers. And the applicant has also stated that he has no issue with the property, with the structure being zoned for personal use only, and cannot be used for a home industry or a home business. So the following comments were received. The Conservation Authority had no objection to the proposal with the implementation of timing windows for tree removal for appropriate erosion and sediment control. The proposed development is located within a regulated area and will require a permit from their office. They wish to be notified of any decision on the file. The County Planning Department and Transportation Services have no concerns. The Risk Management Office has no comments. And we circulated the application, the second application, to all property owners within 120 meters. And just for council's information, after the first application was presented at the public meeting, the applicant did meet with his neighbor, and they agreed to planting shrubs along the property line. So Chris Van Bengem did provide me with an email noting in writing that they had resolved the issue with the development, and that she has no objection to the proposal. She was circulated on the second application, noting the increase in height of the structure as well. So we received no further comments from the neighbor. So the recommendation is to approve the application, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you, Madam Planner. No members of the public register with the clerk to provide comments in support of or in opposition to the application. The applicant is here. Mitch, any comments? We're good? Does the committee have any questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Carl.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question. You commented, Jen, about putting that new structure there would be only for personal use. Is that something you would write into that site plan? And what happens if the property sells and somebody decides they want a home industry use? Can they come back and apply to have that?
Madam Planner.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Deputy Mayor. So there is no site plan agreement required for this development. What will happen is that the site-specific zoning bylaw amendment will specify that will permit the structure at the greater height and authorize the increase in lot coverage for the accessory structure and total lot coverage, but it will also specify that the structure can only be used for personal storage.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
So then in future, could someone come back and apply to change that use?
Madam Planner.
Yes, anyone can come forward with an application to change the zoning on a property. So as long as it complies with official plan designations, then staff generally review the application, see what's being proposed, and an application could be accepted. So it depends on what they're proposing. It is a smaller lot, so that's why which wouldn't permit a home industry use as of right, meaning without a zoning amendment. So that's why we're cautious to be clear that it cannot be used for commercial and industrial use. And the intent of the application has been stated that it was for personal storage of personal belongings.
Okay, thank you, Madam Planner. That's your question. Is there any other questions from council? Seeing none, I have a recommendation here. It has been demonstrated that application Z0822 for Mitch Schultz for lands described as concession 4, part lot 12 Derby is consistent with the provincial policy statement 2020, the County of Gray official plan, recolor gray, and the intent of the Township of George Bluff zoning bylaw 2020. It is recommended that the application be approved. Someone to move to put on the floor, please. Moved by Councilor Colburn, second by Councilor Thompson. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, a show of hands, all in favor? The motion is carried. I need a motion for adjournment of this public meeting. Moved by Councilor Colburn, second by Deputy Mayor Carlson. If there's no discussion, the show of hands, all in favor of adjournment? It's carried. We are adjourned. Now, going back to our committee of the whole meeting. We have no delegations. We have no correspondence. We're down to staff reports. The first one is about proposed Rogers Tower. The recommendation is that the report LP 2022-52 be received for information pending the receipt of comments from the Great Sawville Conservation Authority to address the significant woodland or other identified woodlands as noted in the County of Gray comments, and that Tower Policy Protocol REC 0310 be updated. Someone to move it on the floor, please. Moved by Councilor Pringle, second by Councilor Sutherland. Does the committee have any questions on this application? Madam Planner, did you want to make any comments? No?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the report's pretty straightforward. Rogers Communications is looking for concurrence from the township to build a tower across from Cobble Beach. So if you look at the image that's included in the report, there is a red dot that indicates the proposed location. This is adjacent to the township's water tower, and obviously the intent is to enhance wireless voice and data coverage and capacity in the area, which is always a good thing. When we look at the county policies, they support it. So the report gives you an excerpt from the county plan that supports it. One of the things that was realized when we were, reviewing the application and the process was that our tower policy is from 2010. And we have heard comments from other agents with tower applications that it really is out of date, and it's a bit frustrating for them. So that's why there's the recommendation to go in and update the policy. The federal government requires a consultation, so generally that consultation is sufficient. Notices were posted in the newspaper, both the Wyerton Echo and the Owen Sound Sun-Times, to notify people of the applications. So we did circulate the application to different agencies, and you'll see none of the agencies really have any objection to the application. It's just noted by the county that there should be comments received back from the Conservation Authority about the location of that structure, because it does appear to be within a significant woodland. So we haven't received comments back from the Conservation Authority on that. And once they do, then I can bring back an addendum report for the council's review and an issuance of concurrence, which is basically council stating that they're not opposed to the location or placement of the tower.
Thank you, Madam Planner. Comments from council? Council Sutherland, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just noticed that earlier, on the title of the report, it's for 283 Greer Road 1, and then it also says in the photo 282, and it says also in other spots 282. So I just noted that. But it doesn't, is it just through Rogers Communication, or is it for the property owners? The proposal, like, because this is a report we don't usually have like a name of or a business number or something like that. Like there's no name or anything adjacent to the property. It just says property.
Madam Planner, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Sutherland. So Rogers Communications would be renting or leasing a portion of land from I believe that's the old Cranny Farm. So they'd be renting or leasing that. So they'd have a private agreement with the property owner.
Does that answer your question? Go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, I just thought like it would say like for Rogers on the report. Like all of our other reports, just had Schultz and Nichols, and there's no actual. It just says the report number. There's no actual name attached to it. I thought it would have said Rogers Communications or something.
I guess the report indicating the report number PL 2022-52 would specify for Rogers Tower. Is that what I would understand from that? Madam Planner?
I'm sorry, I don't understand what's being asked.
Madam CL, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Sutherland, I think that's what I took your comment to mean, was that in the recommendation, it didn't spell out what the report was about. Okay. We can amend that. Right. We can make that amendment.
So just so I'm clear, so what Councillor Sutherland you're asking for is that you would like to see that the report PL 2252 is for Rogers Tower. So at this location, is this what you're? Okay. Madam Clerk, do that's just so noted, or do we amend the motion? Oh, okay. So the motion, I believe, was moved and seconded. That was moved by Councillor Pringle, second by Councillor Sullivan. If there's no other discussion on the motion before us, I'll ask for a vote on the motion, please. All in favor, show of hands. The motion is carried. Moving off our agenda, we're down to a report for Bradburn. Recommendation is that it has been demonstrated that application Z1721 for Cheryl-Lean Bradburn and Blair Bradburn for land subscribed as part lot 17 concession 2 Sarawak is consistent with the provincial policy statement 2020, the county gray official plan, recolor gray, the towns of George and Bus official plan, and the intent of the towns of George and Bus zoning bylaw 2020. It is recommended that the application be approved. Someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Carlton, second by. I need a seconder. Moved by Councillor Barfoot. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? Councillor Colburn, please go ahead.
Just a process question. If this has already been approved by the Committee of Adjustment, and we've been told we can't change that decision, why then are we asking for it to be approved here as well? It's a process question.
I'm going to ask the planner to comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Colburn. The Committee of Adjustment can only approve a severance application. There is an associated zoning amendment application that goes with this to change the zoning on the property, to rezone it to residential. So that's what the Committee of the Whole is being asked to approve this evening, and then that would then be ratified by Council. So only Council can approve a zoning bylaw amendment, not Committee of Adjustment.
Are you clear on that now, Councilor Cope? Okay. Is there any other discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, a show of hands, all in favor? The motion is carried. Moving on for agenda, we're down to public question period. Deputy Clerk, has there been any comment? No? Okay. Moving on, unfinished business, we have none. New business, we have none. Does any council member have any notice of motions I'd like to bring forward here tonight? Seeing none, we have no closed sessions. The date of our next meeting is August 31st at 5 o'clock. If we have no other business here tonight, before I adjourn, I'd just like to remind council members that the members that have indicated they would work the Salmon Spectacular volunteer bar night. It's 6:37 this Saturday night. So look forward to see the members that can be there to be there. So we'll go and serve our community. The Saturday, the 27th. Yeah, sorry. I don't know, Carol, if you were here, I'd put it out to a couple. Oh, it's Saturday, August 27th. Meet there at 6:37. And it was open for all of council and staff that would like to attend. And some council members, I believe Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Colburn, Councillor Pringle, Deputy Mayor Carlton, and myself have indicated that we would go. And you? Good. Oh, well, I'm glad. Anyway, I just wanted to remind council it's this Saturday night, and really appreciate everyone showing up, and we will have a good time. If there's no other business here tonight, I'll ask for adjournment of this public meeting or this council meeting. It's been a long week. Councillor Pringle, moved by Councillor Pringle, second by Deputy Mayor Carlton. Show of hands, all in favor? We're now adjourned. Thank you, everybody.